The photo fell out quietly, like the truth had been waiting for years. It was tucked inside Gavin's old design notebook, right where I kept the garden plans. A Polaroid. He was shirtless, smiling. Next to him, bare skin, long curls, a familiar scarf I'd knitted last winter. Maris, my cousin, the one living under my roof, the one I threw a baby shower for. She said the father left. She didn't say it was my husband. Where in the world are you watching this from? And would you have stayed silent? Subscribe if you believe the truth always finds its way out. I didn't build the house with my hands, but I designed every inch of it. The curved window seat in the kitchen where Gavin liked to read after dinner. The hallway skylight catching the morning light in winter. Even the herb garden just outside the mudroom. Chives, rosemary, lavender. Gavin always forgot their names. Maris remembered them all. She moved in 5 months ago, said she needed a fresh start. I told her this place had enough quiet for any storm. Gavin didn't ask twice. He'd always liked her, said she had resilient energy. Back then, I thought it was sweet. We'd been married 8 years. We knew how to move around each other, coffee poured without asking, blankets shared without speaking. Our rhythm wasn't romantic anymore, but it was stable, predictable, safe. He worked long hours, creative lead at a clean tech firm. I managed outdoor design projects, city parks, memorial spaces, schoolyards. I liked working with trees more than people. They didn't lie. They didn't leave. Maris came with 2 suitcases, a broken phone, and her old film camera. She slept on our guest bed the first night and cried without sound. I brought her tea, a charger, a quilt. She hugged me like I was the only family left. Maybe I was. We used to be close. She called me her anchor when her parents split. I paid her tuition 1 semester, gave her my old Honda. Let her live here rent-free while she looked for work. When she told us about the baby, Gavin wrapped her in a blanket before I could say a word. She wept into his sweater like it was hers. He whispered something I didn't hear. Then he said, "Don't worry, you'll have a village here." I nodded, because I believed him. I always did. She started baking again. Lemon bread, blueberry pie. The kitchen smelled like nostalgia. She played jazz while cleaning, wore Gavin's old college sweatshirt, said it was comfy and faded like home. I smiled, because what else do you do when your house becomes someone else's safe place? People say you'll know when something's wrong. That betrayal has a smell, a sound, a shape. But sometimes it looks like kindness. Sometimes it speaks in your voice, and sometimes it thanks you for dinner. The week before I found the photo, Maris gave me a Mother's Day card. She said, "Your strength makes this house a home." I kept it on the fridge for days. Sound, wind hitting windows, a long pause. Looking back, I think I mistook silence for peace, and trust for truth. But peace can hide cracks, and trust can be the prettiest mask for betrayal. It started with a towel, a lavender one, still damp, folded neatly on the edge of the hamper the way Gavin always left it after his morning showers, but this time it smelled different. Lavender, not fresh garden lavender. Artificial, pressed into oil. The kind sold in glass dropper bottles with words like calm and balance on the label. My throat tightened. Gavin knew I couldn't stand that scent. The synthetic kind gave me headaches. I told him that in our 2nd year of marriage after he bought me a spa kit for Valentine's. He returned it the next day. We never kept it in the house again, until now. I walked to the linen closet, pulled the basket of oils and bath items. Nothing lavender there. Maris's door was cracked. I knocked lightly, waited. No answer. She was out. I stepped inside. The room still smelled like citrus and dust. Her diffuser blinked amber on the dresser. Beside it, a small bottle with a purple label. Lavender Bliss. The top was open. The scent hit hard, sharp, cloying. Exactly the kind from the towel. I stood still. Maybe it was hers. Maybe she used it in the bathroom. Maybe Gavin picked up the towel by mistake. Or maybe not. When Maris came home that evening, she dropped her bag in the entryway and rubbed her back, groaning about how tight her hips had gotten. She said, "I think your husband's towel is softer than mine. Hope you don't mind I borrowed one earlier." I didn't flinch. She was smiling, the kind of smile that doesn't ask for permission. I nodded. "Oh, thought you had your own set." "I do, but yours feel Warmer, she laughed, rubbing her belly with both hands. Maybe because they're close to the water heater. I smiled back, said nothing, but I took the towel, washed it twice, threw the bottle away when she wasn't looking. That night I couldn't sleep, not because of the smell, because of the memory. The day Gavin gave me that spa kit, he'd used the same words Maris did. Maybe because they're close to the heat. The towel had his name, but the scent wasn't mine. 2 days later, I needed Gavin's login to resend an invoice to one of his vendors. He handed me his iPad already open, said use Safari, it's saved. It was, but so was his Gmail. I didn't mean to click it, didn't plan anything. I was just searching Pine Hill landscaping. But the autofill dropped down too fast, too familiar. Lavender and Lace Boutique, order confirmed. I tapped. The email was dated 3 weeks ago, addressed to Gavin, shipping address our home. 2 items. Lavender oil premium spa blend, 2 Ozarn, 2 sterling silver knot earrings, handmade gift box included. It wasn't the oil that stopped me, it was the earrings. I don't wear silver, never have. Gavin knows that. He bought me gold studs on our 3rd anniversary after I got my ears pierced at 34. He said only real gold for your skin. These earrings, they weren't a mistake. I scrolled down, he'd deleted the confirmation, but Gmail keeps trash for 30 days. The email had no gift note, just order placed successfully, ships discreetly. I took a screenshot. That night I asked him over dinner, what happened to that email from Lavender and Lace? I think you ordered something for the baby shower. He blinked, took a beat too long, then said, oh right, that was a gift for one of my coworkers. She's due soon, wanted to send something thoughtful. I nodded, kept chewing, didn't mention the shipping address. The next morning, Maris came downstairs wearing earrings, small silver knots almost flush with her ears. She tilted her head, adjusting them like someone checking how they sparkle in soft light. I made her coffee, she smiled. These are new, I said. Oh yeah, she shrugged. A friend sent them, no name, but they came with lavender oil and a note that said, you deserve softness. She didn't know I'd already checked the box. There was no note inside. I poured her coffee, steady hands. That night, I moved the screenshot into a folder on my laptop labeled Trellis Roots. It was the name of a garden Gavin and I once dreamed of building together. Now it would be where the truth would grow. Mars had a prenatal appointment that morning. She couldn't find her insurance folder. Said she'd left it in the kitchen drawer under the pens. I found it for her. A tan folder with a bent corner and a green paperclip. Inside were the usual documents intake forms, medical summaries, and 3 ultrasound prints tucked between 2 folded bills. One of them slid out, decor, and landed face down on the floor. I picked it up, black and white, grainy, a small form inside a curved arc. A.B. Hartwell, 13 weeks. The label at the bottom read, Patient Vaughn, Maris partner, Hartwell Gavin. I stood still for a full 5 seconds, not because I was shocked, but because there was no one left to lie to. Not even myself. She said the father left. She said he didn't want to be involved. She said she didn't want to talk about it, and I let her move in. Let her cry on my shoulder. Let her use my towels, wear his sweaters, and sit in the corner of the couch where he used to read. I placed the ultrasound back in the folder carefully, didn't change a thing, didn't speak. When she came down, she looked tired. I handed her the folder. Thanks, she smiled. I can't believe I misplaced it. She was wearing the silver knot earrings again. Gavin's car keys sat next to her tea. As she gathered her purse, the folder slipped open. The ultrasound print peeked out. She caught it quickly, shoved it back in. Our eyes met for a split second. Her smile didn't reach her eyes this time. I didn't blink, I didn't ask. She left for her appointment. I stayed behind. I opened my laptop, created a new subfolder under Trellis Roots. Named it Medical Confirmed. And for the first time in weeks, I stopped wondering if I was imagining things. Because a heartbeat doesn't lie, and a label doesn't misspell the truth. It was a Tuesday evening. He'd fallen asleep on the couch halfway through a documentary he'd chosen remote, still in hand. I walked into the room with a blanket, paused. His phone was on the coffee table screen, still lit, unlocked. Gavin was careful with everything: passwords, thumbprints, Face ID. He even turned off previews on text, said it helped him focus. But tonight he forgot. And the app was open, not iMessage, not email, something encrypted. A green logo I didn't recognize. I didn't scroll, didn't touch anything. Just leaned close enough to read. One name at the top, M. I didn't need the rest of the letters. The last message was still glowing. Amor, she has no idea. 1 more month and we're out. There were no hearts, no emojis, just a sense of certainty. I picked up a notepad from the side table, the one we kept for grocery lists. I wrote each message I could see exactly as they were. D. Told her I'll be in Montpelier for site visits. That buys us the weekend. I'll tell her I'm visiting an old college friend. We'll be careful. At. You're always careful. That's why I chose you. I underlined that one. I wrote down the timestamps, the usernames, even the ... that showed he was typing again before he fell asleep. I didn't take screenshots, didn't email myself, didn't forward a thing. Because digital trails vanish, but ink stays. When he stirred, I was already in the kitchen chopping ginger for tea. He walked in, rubbing his eyes. You finished the doc, he asked. I smiled, not really, got distracted. He kissed my cheek, said I'll rewind it. Let's watch together. I nodded, but the notepad was already tucked in the bottom drawer beneath expired coupons and folded grocery receipts. Page marked, exit plan, confirmed. Maris brought it up over tea. She looked hesitant but hopeful, the kind of hopeful that hides behind guilt. I know it's a lot to ask, she said, stirring honey into her cup. But would you help me host the shower? She paused, eyes wide, like she was afraid I'd say no. It doesn't have to be anything big, she added quickly. Just a few close friends, some family. Gavin said the studio by the lake would be perfect. Gavin. So he was involved in the planning too. I smiled slowly, held my cup steady. The one near Champlain, I asked. She nodded. It has those glass panels. Remember the last fundraiser you hosted there? Everyone loved it. Everyone did, especially Gavin. He said the light there made everything look softer, like forgiveness. I leaned back in my chair. The last Saturday of the month would work. Maris exhaled relief wrapped in gratitude. Really, you don't mind? Of course not, I said. She reached across the table and touched my hand. You're the only one I trust with this. That word again, trust. That night I pulled out my old sketchbook, the one I used for planning outdoor spaces, community gardens, memorial walls. But this time I was designing something else. A sequence, a layout, a moment. I divided the pages into 3. Arrival, atmosphere, revelation. Arrival would be warm, familiar, guests greeted with cider and music. Soft decor, natural tones, fresh peonies in mason jars. I'd bake lemon bread, Maris's favorite. She'd feel safe. Atmosphere would be curated, photos strung with twine, Gavin helping arrange chairs, Maris in a pale dress, hand resting on her belly. The camera would catch everything, angles mattered. And then revelation. Not shouting, not drama, just truth. Projected. I didn't know yet whether it would be the ultrasound, the chat transcripts, or the video clips from the lake studio door camera, but something would break the room. I started making the guest list the next morning. Only those who mattered. My parents, Gavin's sister, Maris's mentor from college, friends who called me steady in their wedding toasts, colleagues who said Gavin and I were a power couple. I needed witnesses, not for revenge, but for record. When Gavin came home that evening, he looked pleased. She asked you, he said, unbuttoning his sleeves. I nodded. I think it'll be good for her. Closure, he said. Closure, I repeated. Let it roll off my tongue like smoke. He kissed my forehead. Thank you for being you. I smiled back. That night, I downloaded a projector app to my phone, tested how it would cast photos onto glass, watched shadows bend, watched names glow. I created a folder on my desktop, shower program, final. Each file had a name, lavenderreceipt.pdf, ultrasound label.jpg, trellisroots.txt, thread.docx, baby studio, footage.movie. I double-backed them onto a USB, wrapped it in tissue, tied it with twine. It looked like a gift, because in a way it was. 1 week before the shower, Maris asked if I needed help setting up. I told her to rest. She smiled, called me her sister soul. I didn't correct her. She wasn't wrong. She just didn't know what kind of sister I had become. The day of the shower arrived with clear skies. The lake was still. The sun hit the glass walls of the studio like a spotlight, soft and gold. Guests arrived in waves, laughter heels on polished floors, the scent of peonies and pastries. Gavin stood by the drink station helping pour sparkling cider into fluted glasses. He wore his slate blue button-down, the one I used to pick out for big events. Maris was glowing, not just from pregnancy, from attention, from certainty that she was adored. She wore a pale ivory dress with lace at the sleeves, the kind meant to suggest innocence. Her curls fell in soft waves over her shoulders. Someone gave her a flower crown. She hugged guests, thanked them for coming, posed for photos by the window. I took most of them myself. When she turned toward me, she mouthed, "Thank you, big sis." I smiled, lifted my glass. Behind her, the screen was already set up, framed by white curtains, a simple title card ready. Moments worth remembering. The plan was simple. I had told everyone we'd end the party with a short tribute, a montage of Maris's journey, childhood photos, a few silly videos, a quiet celebration of how far she'd come. It wasn't a lie. There would be photos, there would be a journey. Just not the one she expected. The music softened, cups emptied, laughter became background noise. I walked to the front, held the mic like it was nothing more than a dinner toast. Thank you all, I began, for coming today, for showing up not just to celebrate a new life, but to stand beside someone you love. Maris smiled from her chair, hands resting gently on her stomach. Gavin stood just behind her, fingertips grazing the back of her seat. The gesture didn't go unnoticed. I continued, "Some people spend years hiding, others spend their lives protecting, and sometimes those who protect get mistaken for fools." A few people shifted in their chairs. I smiled again. I put together a few moments I think we all deserve to see. No explanations, just clarity. I reached into a small paper gift bag on the table, pulled out the USB, silver, unlabeled. Gavin's smile flickered just for half a second. Maris tilted her head. I plugged it in. The screen went black. Then, the first image, Gavin and Maris outside the studio's back door, her hand on his chest, his mouth near her ear. He wasn't wearing the slate blue shirt. He was shirtless. And she was laughing. The screen faded to black, then lit up again. Next slide, a scanned receipt from Lavender and Lace Boutique. 2 items, lavender oil, sterling silver earrings, shipped to our home, paid with Gavin's business card. The image lingered. Then came the ultrasound. Grainy, centered. Name Vaughn, Maris partner, Hartwell Gavin. Someone gasped, quiet, sharp, covered with a hand. Maris had stopped breathing, or maybe just forgot how. She blinked at the screen once, didn't look at Gavin, didn't look at me. Gavin took a step forward, then stopped. Another image, a chat transcript, printed and scanned, lines in green and gray. She has no idea. 1 more month and we're out. You're always careful. That's why I chose you. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." I stepped forward, voice calm, fingers still on the clicker. "This isn't revenge," I said. "This is truth," finally standing up. No one interrupted. I moved to the final slide, a still image from the security camera outside this very studio, dated 6 weeks ago. Maris, Gavin, kissing under the floodlights, her hand pulling his collar down, his car parked behind them. Same parking spot as today. I turned to the guests. "Thank you all for coming to celebrate new life," I said. "I hope today gave you clarity on the kind of people you've celebrated." I turned off the projector. The silence wasn't awkward, it was sacred. Maris stood up finally. Someone moved to help her. She raised a hand, then sat down again. Gavin didn't speak, didn't move. My father stood, his jaw clenched, his eyes full not with tears, but with disgust. He looked at Gavin, then at Maris, and then at me. "You want us to leave?" he asked. I nodded once, but not for him. "For them," I said. He didn't argue. One by one the guests filed out, some in tears, some in quiet fury, some with heads bowed like in church. Maris never looked up. She just stared at her hands. The same hands that once wrote me birthday cards with the words, "You're my only constant." Gavin stayed last. He walked toward me slowly, opened his mouth. I didn't wait. "There's nothing left to explain," I said. "Everything you wanted to hide is now exactly where it belongs in the light." I dropped the USB into the trash bin, not because I needed to, but because I'd already made 5 copies. The morning after the shower, I walked into the studio alone. The peonies were wilted, empty cups still sat in corners. A single silver balloon drifted near the ceiling, tied to nothing. I didn't rush to clean, didn't need to. Silence had already done its work. Maris left the guest room that same evening, didn't say goodbye, didn't pack properly. She left a sock in the dryer and her prenatal vitamins on the counter. Gavin didn't come home that night or the next. I didn't ask where he went, didn't chase him with questions he no longer deserved to answer. On Monday, a formal email came from his company's ethics committee. An internal inquiry has been initiated regarding inappropriate use of funds and a conflict of interest involving an employee and an external beneficiary. I didn't forward anything, I didn't need to. Someone else at the party had already sent the folder. By Wednesday, Gavin's profile was removed from the company website. He wasn't fired, but reassigned, quietly, to a remote satellite office in the Southern District. His new title had no team, no speaking events, no visibility. That was all he ever wanted to be seen, and now he wasn't. Maris moved out of Vermont altogether. Someone said she went to stay with a friend in Chicago. Another said she flew to stay with a cousin in Portland. I didn't check. But 1 week later, a box arrived at my door. Inside the silver earrings, the lavender oil bottle barely used, a handwritten note unsigned. "I made a mistake too big to speak. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted to return what wasn't mine. I burned the note, recycled the bottle, kept the earrings in a drawer labeled evidence, not memory." I didn't cry. There was no grief left. Only quiet and clarity and the blueprints of something entirely new. A month later, I filed the paperwork. The studio's new name was approved in 3 days, Verity Garden. I took down the old signage myself. Painted over the white cursive with a deep green base lettered the new name by hand. Simple all caps, no flourishes. Truth doesn't need embellishment. The relaunch was quiet. I sent invitations only to former clients I trusted. Women who had told me stories about betrayal, change, survival. I didn't mention what happened, didn't need to. The space spoke for itself. I replaced the photo wall with botanical prints, not flowers, but roots. Cross-sections of tangled systems beneath the surface. One client stood staring at them for a long time. "You always see what people ignore," she said. Then booked me to design her backyard sanctuary. My waiting area had new chairs. Earth-toned, deep-seated, built to hold the whole body. I put out tea blends instead of wine. No more soft jazz, just wind chimes, and the sound of water running gently over stone. Every woman who entered felt it. This wasn't a space for networking. It was a space for becoming. One afternoon, a client asked me why Verity Garden. I didn't hesitate, because the truth deserves a place to grow. She smiled, didn't press further. By then, Gavin had stopped emailing. The last message came 2 weeks prior, just a subject line. I didn't mean for it to happen. I archived it, never opened it. I stopped tracking where Maris went. Stopped trying to understand why. That's a question meant for people who believe it matters. Me? I no longer needed reasons, just boundaries, just air. Sometimes I walked into the studio at dusk, stood beneath the skylight, and watched the lavender shadows rise along the floor. That used to be the hour we made dinner. Now it was the hour I listened to my own breath without interruption. Not everyone who breaks you is a villain, and not everyone you expose is gone for good. but sometimes truth does enough damage that silence becomes justice. I didn't rebuild from pain. I rebuilt from proof, and for the first time in years, everything around me finally made sense.